In this video, I'm going to cover a very good question from somebody about alphabet shares and whether HMRC or the government will stop these being used, and just like they did with EBTs and mixed partnerships. Got a question here from somebody which asks, speaking to different accountants, some of them have this concern that multiple share classes in a limited company will go the same way as an employee benefit trust or partnerships. What are your thoughts on this? Well, the answer really is nobody has a crystal ball, so no one can definitively say to you yay or nay, yes this will happen, or no this won't happen. But for those who aren't aware of multiple share classes, these are better known as alphabet shares. So in a limited company you have ordinary shares, and then you can set up different classes of shares. Now the reason why they're called alphabet shares because they usually go with A, B, C, D, E, so on and so forth. And these different classes of shares, you can restrict and limit the rights that people have with those particular shares. So if you created A-class shares, you could limit somebody's voting rights, you could limit their rights to a distribution on winding up, and you can limit their rights to a dividend. So it gives you quite a bit of control, if that's the right word to use, in terms of who gets what and when they get it. Now, is that with EBTs, they were pretty much abused, because what people did was set up tax avoidance schemes using the EBT legislation, and then heavily marketed those particular schemes where the taxpayer or a taxpayer had a particular advantage, but there was no commercial risk. It was pretty much just a scheme set up to save tax. And that's why HMRC then stopped those particular avenues and went after people who had set up EBTs. With partnerships, in terms, I assume that question is about where we had a mixed partnership, where you had a firm, for example, who set up an LLP, and then the people who owned, or the organization or companies that owned the partnership were limited companies. So you had mixed partnership rules, and basically, rather than taking a salary, what partners were doing were transferring their share of income into the limited company, then drawing down a salary at their basic rate, or they were just below their personal allowance, so they don't pay any national insurance, and then taking the rest as dividends. That used to work well in the past when there was no tax on the basic rate. That's obviously changed now, so it's not as efficient as it used to be. And then obviously I think in 2014-15 HMRC brought in the rules about mixed partnerships, which stopped that happening. Can we see alphabet shares going down the same route? I don't think so right now, because it's not being abused per se. So for example, you might have an employee who you want to give some shares to, and you want to recognize their achievement in helping you grow the company, but you might not want to give them voting rights. So they can have some an additional dividend for helping grow the company and for helping grow the profits, but you don't want to give them any voting rights, so they can't be at board meetings to then vote on a particular matter. That is a standard commercial arrangement for people who want to give somebody a right to a dividend but don't want to give them voting rights. The same could be for your children, or for your spouse, or for somebody else who you enter into that arrangement with. So I don't think alphabet shares are being taken advantage of. It's people use those to enter into a commercial arrangement which works for both parties. So can I see that particular avenue being stopped? I don't think so. But obviously nobody can guarantee you. If you asked somebody 7-8 years ago, would section 24 come in, people would have said to you, highly unlikely. I doubt it. If you ask somebody again 8-10 years ago, would an additional 3% SDLT charge arise on a second or additional property, or buying through a limited company, most people would have said to you, we doubt it. But those things have happened, as have many others. So I can't obviously give you a definitive promise, but I think it's unlikely, because the structure that people are using with alphabet shares isn't one of abuse usually, or not that I've seen. It's one that works for both parties and is a commercial arrangement. So I can see that continuing because it's not being abused.